Well, hello everybody, Max and Max's Models, and I'm happy to report that I did get out to the American Heritage Museum about 45 minutes west of Boston and had a great time. They do have a veterans discount, otherwise it's about $20 per person and well worth every penny. In the foyer, you see a replica of Da Vinci's tank, along with some vintage weapons. And then you're going to go into a theater where they're going to show a couple of videos, and in there they have some rifles, a 75 caliber Brown Bess and a Kentucky rifle that are actual artifacts of the American Revolutionary War. Then you're going to go into a World War I dugout, and that's where things get interesting with the show.
Take cover.
So after this second theater, we go to have an American Renault FT5 tank, the American copy. I believe this is a combat veteran, and it does have some battle damage to it. There's some more artifacts in the room, machine guns, uniforms, things like that. Then you'll go into yet another theater chamber where they talk about the rise of the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese. They have a Vickers tank and a Mark 1A Panzer, which has been restored to absolute mint condition. The interior is as fantastic as the exterior. You can look in it, and found it incredibly interesting. You think about this is where the mighty Panzers began, with this glorified tractor, and they have also a replica. As they talk about the rise of the Imperial Japanese, the Nazis have a replica of the Mercedes-Benz car that was used by you-know-who. And then they release you into the main chamber, where, of course, the centerpiece is the Panther. We'll be talking about that in a minute.
And here's the main gallery. And, of course, the Panther is in the center. Yeah. And down below it, the Stug and the Nebelwerfer and the Kitten Cred.
We'll be talking more about the Stug in a little bit. And of course, all of the artifacts are, for the most part, original equipment. Anything, if it is a replica, would say so. They have the Second World War, before the war. Here's the Sherman with the M3 gun. Gives you a good look at how it comes out. Then, of course, they move into Korea, the Cold War, and up to relatively modern times after the Gulf War. They have Russian, American, Japanese, German, British, just an incredible collection. I took these photos from the upper floor where you come in. There's a Russian self-propelled gun, I believe it was used by the Iraqis. And there is a good old Scud. And they have a few airplanes here. Unfortunately, the airplane pavilion was closed, but they do have a Bf-109G, a P-40, an F-6F Hellcat, and a FM2 late model Wildcat on display on this floor. And there's the Matilda, and just so many cool. A lot of these tanks I've never seen, but I've been to a lot of museums, but a lot of these tanks, like the Matilda, I'd never seen one before in person, or Churchill. And the only Panther I'd seen didn't have any tracks on it. That was at the Patton Museum years ago. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the Panther here. I'm not the Panther fanboy I used to be, and, well, here's why. Well, guys, here I am in front of the American Heritage Museum's Panther, and a lot of people think this is the greatest tank, and it certainly is one of the most technically advanced. I'm not as much of a Panther fan as I used to be after learning more about them. You know, the early ones had extreme reliability issues, and although it is an impressive tank in many ways, as we're going to talk about later, I actually think that this and the Tiger tanks costed. It should have made more of these and less Tigers. I really am not as big of a Panther fan as I used to be. It would not make my top 5 list. And despite what a lot of people think, this tank actually in some ways may have held the Germans back more than it helped them. But we'll talk about that later. Now this is probably one of my favorite German vehicles. This is what they should have made more of. Economical, effective. This is a Stug 3, I believe. This and the 4, I think, for what they got out of them, for what they put into them, and their effectiveness, this is probably one of my favorite German vehicles, next to the Mark IV, which was, you know, basically this with a turret. If they put the Panther gun on the Mark IV, they probably would have had all they needed, and they could have cranked them out more like we did Shermans. But for my money, although it's definitely not a flawless vehicle, this was what they did right. doesn't get enough love, whereas the Panther is beloved, yet in reality, one can make the argument was just not ready for the big show. Yep, the Stug Life, baby, the real gangsta tanksta. Here's one of those German half-tracks with interleaved road wheels. This is a German field kitchen unit, very muy importante. And of course a scout car. And pretty neat little vehicle too. You guys are probably familiar with the Schwemmwagen, the little floating Volkswagen. And of course its stablemate, the Kubelwagen, which is coming up here in just a second. There we go. And drones are nothing new. This is a drone tank that carried along a large explosive. And of course they're excellent half-track, complicated but excellent. And let's see, what else do we have today? Oh, the Kettenkrad, incredibly complex but really interesting vehicle. And the little door knocker 37mm cannon. The reason for the lighting, the reason for the weird lighting in some of these photos is periodically they dim the lights in the whole place and start showing movies. There's the famous Hetzer, and there's some debate about whether it was actually called a Hetzer. A lot of Soviet hardware also. This is off of a real German submarine. It's the aft of the sail of a real U-boat, the Mighty 88. And of course they've got a lot of cool British hardware, including this Churchill tank. You can see the lights were dimmed. But that's the inside of the Churchill. Of course, this thing's restored to just absolute perfection. And what would be a British display without a universal carrier? Then we have a rare piece of Japanese armor, one of their self-propelled guns that I was not familiar with. And the fact that they were able to find one of these, never mind get a museum, is incredible. Of course, there's the Mighty Lee or Grant, depending on if it's American or British. And this P-40B model is done up in the colors of George Welch, who was one of the two pilots that got airborne, him and Ken Taylor, and they shot down a confirmed 6 aircraft. 30 calibers in the wings, 250 calibers in the cowling. That was the gun arrangement back then. And they actually landed in the middle of combat and refueled and reloaded and took off again. An M5. This is a cut open Sherman turret, so you can see the inside. Of course, the mighty M3 Scout car. And this is the Korean War stable over here, which of course is a lot of late World War II era equipment. And I used to have 43 Willis MB just like this one, not in this nice a condition. And of course the M26 Pershing made hay there as well. And here we have some Marine Corps vehicles, and oh, there's another look at the Pershing. That was a Marine Corps Pershing, by the way. And of course the Priest, the M7 self-propelled gun 105. And these armored vehicles, they have some stuff in there you don't normally hear about. You know, not just the glamour vehicles that everyone knows, like the Jeep and the half-track, but they have stuff out here that even I wasn't that familiar with. And there's the interior of the half-track, great shape. Looks like it's ready to take out. And a lot of these vehicles run and are taken out periodically and driven around. So we continue on. We have some post-war tanks and the Walker Bulldog, some of which were given to other countries. And they go from the late model Patton to the early model M60s and stuff. They have a pretty good collection of Cold War armor. There's the Matilda II next to the Sherman, the only other tank to see service in every battlefield. And the more Russian hardware, Cold War era stuff. And I'm doing this on my phone, folks, so I apologize if I got a few things a little bit out of order. And so the Matilda, I found one of the most interesting because I'd never seen one up close before. And that thing really is solid. They didn't call it the Rhino for nothing. A nice collection of uniforms and weapons as well. There's the Scud launcher from the front. And at some point, possibly when I get home, I'm going to see if I can put out a better arranged video. There's one of my favorites, the Zeus 23. Awesome anti-aircraft weapon. Unfortunately, our guys were on the wrong end of it, and so were a lot of the Israelis. But man, it was really effective. And I wanted to get an interior shot of it. Fortunately, they have it where you can get up close and get some interior pictures as well. There's a driver's station, just really beautifully restored. There's the self-propelled gun. I like that they have a lot of the hatches open where you can see inside. Some more American armor. And this is just a fantastic museum, and I love that a lot of this stuff runs. And M551, well, listen. When I was about 13 years old, maybe even 12, this is the first armored vehicle I ever sat in, an M551 Sheridan. Many years later, my brother would drop one from his C-141 Starlifter during Operation Just Cause.
there is a symmetry to the universe.
So now I know why the M551 holds a special place in my heart, even if it was just a little aluminum tank. This is the only M1 Abrams I know of that's in a private museum, and it is apparently on loan from the Marine Corps Museum. And it is in the actual Desert Storm markings. They have the story of the tank there. For all you modelers, there's a couple of close-ups for a few details. Marine Corps tanks are equipped differently than Army tanks. You can watch the Chieftains video on that. And of course a Humvee and a little drone vehicle. Well guys, that's just a quick and dirty. I'll try and make a nice one later. This is a piece of steel from the actual Twin Towers. So kind of how that whole thing got started. So guys, I just want to get something out to you. Like I say, when I get home and get these downloaded on my computer, I'll try to get out a nicer video using these imagery and better narrated, some pictures I missed, and maybe my buddy Bill, who went with me, we went to high school together and served in the Army together, and we went to the museum together, and well, there's a little something on the end here for you. I think you'll appreciate. Guys, take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.
Hey guys, these are original sea rations, and this is the stuff I lived off of for real when I was in the Army. I went in shortly after the Vietnam War, a few years after Vietnam had ended, but we were still using all of this stuff. Some guys even had the little sterno stove. And well, what was your favorite?
Beef and shrapnel.
Beef and shrapnel. There's one, beef and spice sauce. And I'm gonna go the spaghetti and meatballs on mine. Well, the ham and eggs are, I'm the only guy I know who actually liked them, but you know me, I like, as my wife says, I like everything. A handy trait when you're in the infantry. Reporting from downtown Desert City, where we have torched everything of value. Why yes, the United States Army was here. How did you know?